Thanks, Peter, and good afternoon, everybody. We're all familiar, or those of us who've been on whatever size or through whatever route involved in the sort of planning process that we've just been hearing about, of two sides locking horns, unable or unwilling to give way. They've got different priorities, there are different imperatives driving them, and they sometimes end up seeing it as a zero-sum game. What if they were able to come together around a common set of priorities and goals? What if we were to get to the stage where both sides were seeing their priorities being delivered, something being achieved which they can be proud of? Now, up until May this year, you could have talked about the Liberal Democrats and Conservatives in that way. We've come together around a set of priorities, and now we've got to deliver on them. In my own constituency, I've seen a number of infrastructure projects come forward, and the big one that Peter was talking about earlier on, which is still ongoing, which is just over the border into the neighbouring constituency, is for an energy from waste plant for Cornwall as part of the big contract with CETA that Cornwall Council is engaged in. The council turned down the planning application after a huge anti-campaign by people in the community where it was proposed to be sited, and that's now gone off to appeal. So both sides are now left frustrated. There are costs to that, and it's a very unsatisfactory process for everybody who's been involved in it. On my own doorstep in North Cornwall, we had a situation where South West Water needed to deliver some sewage treatment infrastructure. Their first attempt to do 3 smaller schemes along a part of the North Coast met with huge community opposition, went to a planning inspector who then threw out those applications. A revised scheme went forward, which some communities were happy with and others weren't. And as part of that, perhaps developing this approach, South West Water made an offer to the community where the second proposal was to be cited to say, your parish hall is pretty tatty, falling down. How about we build you a new one while we're on site putting in this infrastructure? But by that stage, attitudes were so entrenched that people saw that as a bribe, and anyone in the community who was willing to entertain that and discuss it was a traitor, was going over to the other side. And again, throwing something like that in at that stage is actually counterproductive, because those in the community who then were interested were set against the others, and it set off another whole train of unpleasantness. That scheme was passed by the council, is now nearing completion, but unfortunately South West Water have had to go back to try and vary the planning permission on the noise criteria that were put there, because they now think that the kit will be running more noisily than it was. And yet again, the community there, even those who come round to seeing that was happening, are going to feel let down, because some of the conditions that were put on it as part of that, the company are now trying to vary. So yet again, that's another failure of engaging with the community, involving them and driving it forward. And I say that as not someone who's been actively involved in opposing either of those. I mean, I don't see it as my role as a local member of Parliament to oppose planning applications. I see it as my role to make sure that the process is working. People have to understand that just because they get an outcome that they don't agree with, that doesn't mean the planning process hasn't worked. It means that the outcome isn't the one that they would have liked. But if they're feeling like that, then it means the planning process has failed from the very start. And so we have to look at a new way of doing things. Now, in the associate group, we've done a great deal of sort of networking events and so on over previous years, but certainly the approach that was taken to write the report last year on incentivising community buy-in on waste infrastructure seems to have prompted a lot of discussion. It's been well received by all the parties in Westminster, and I hope that kind of work from our group in the future as well is the sort of thing where we can make a bit of a difference, bringing together people from the industry and those in local government and in politics nationally to try to come up with solutions to move forward. So I think what we were hearing there from Chris is absolutely right, that it's got to be significant. The community have got to feel that they really are getting something from it. We have a lot of processes going on that run, unfortunately, in parallel, or the timescales don't add up. And that's a role I think that government needs to look at more clearly. With things around the Sustainable Communities initiatives, we need to look at, rather than government coming in saying this pot of money is available for this length of time, which then puts an extra driver in to get a planning application in before perhaps this other project that could be running alongside it, that could be integrated with it in some way, is being pushed by other forces. So I think in government, what I want to see the coalition doing is looking more innovatively, coming up ways that they can provide whole strategies for communities so that people can feel involved in, like, through the parish planning process. And I speak from the perspective of a rural MP, where some very small communities have come together and agreed on, for example, controversial affordable housing schemes because it's been demonstrated that there is a need. It's their affordable housing that's coming. It's not something that's being imposed on them. But that's not easy because it means going right the way back. And if we're up against the clock here to deliver infrastructure, we've got a problem. But that means we have to start very soon, I think, at getting these plans in place. So for those of you who haven't had a chance to look at the report, I hope that you're able to get hold of a copy and look at some of the issues we're talking about. If you've got anything that you want to feed back into the group, we would really like to hear about it. And I know that there are other plans coming forward through our seminars and also for further research work to take forward projects into the future. But thank you very much for the opportunity to be part of this, and I hope that the rest of the conference goes well.